Hello, friends. I'm guilty. I admit it. I'm not proud of the fact, but I want to come clean. I have compared my situation as a caregiver with others who are giving care to a loved one living with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. Sometimes I have felt that their situation was worse than mine. At other times, I felt that I had it worse than they did. I have thought, but not ever said out loud, things along the line of, wow, your story is so much worse than mine. Or even with chagrin have thought, yeah, well, my husband was younger than your husband when he was diagnosed. There. I've said it, it's out there. Hello, I'm Dr. Renee Harmon. I'm the author of Surfing the Waves of Alzheimer's. It's a memoir about my husband Harvey and his time with younger onset Alzheimer's disease. And I think it's very natural to compare our situation with others. It's one of the functions of support groups, right? To compare notes and see how others are dealing with certain situations. We ask things like, does your loved one wander? How are you dealing with the driving situation? Does your loved one still know who you are? If not, how are you handling that? And I think that's perfectly fine. It's a way to relate to other caregivers. It's also can be a reminder that no two cases of dementia are similar. I've even titled one of the chapters of my book, If You've Met One Person with Alzheimer's, You've Met One Person with Alzheimer's, just making the point that every case of Alzheimer's disease presents and progresses differently. I'll put a link to that particular blog post in the description of today's video. The problem comes is when we measure our situation with some type of yardstick or measuring stick of pain and suffering and somehow quantify our situation versus someone else's situation and come up thinking that one is worse or not as bad as the other, right? To quote Nora McInerney, it's not the Bummer Olympics. If you don't know Nora's podcast, it's titled Terrible Thanks for Asking. My daughter found it several years ago and recommended it to me, and I highly recommend it to you. Ms. McInerney herself experienced a number of personal traumatic experiences all in a row, and is now through her podcast giving people voice to own their own terrible experiences. And as unbelievable as it sounds, it's not a depressing podcast. To illustrate it, I am going to provide a link to a mini episode. It's titled Not the Bummer Olympics, and in it she explains how when people say, my situation doesn't compare to yours, that you're denying and downplaying your own pain and suffering. In it, she highlights a few stories, and actually Elena has a quote in it. You'll recognize her story in it. Beware, there are a few ads at the beginning of it, and there are a few curse words in it. So if you are being a caregiver or suffering with grief or really any number of difficult life situations, please don't compare your situation to mine or anyone else's. You're going through a difficult situation. It is hard, period, end of discussion. Please don't compare it to others. On the same lines, please don't use the expression, well, it could be worse. I guess it could be worse. And I've heard people say this, and I think it might make them feel better if they feel like maybe they can manage their situation better, because at least it's not this, or at least it's not as bad as that. But again, all you're doing when you say that is denying your own pain and suffering and burdens. And absolutely, please don't say it to someone else. That's just cruel. There is no way they will feel better about their life situation if you tell them it could be worse, right? So I will try to remember this. I hope you do too. Thank you. Be well and keep your balance.